Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today as we discuss how to grow an A-plus marketing team in today's competitive world. We are super excited for this webinar, and we're featuring Barbara Gago, VP of Marketing from Greenhouse Software. In fact, Barbara was the first marketing hire at Greenhouse, and she built a 15-person marketing team from scratch. So she's going to be a great resource to answer any questions you guys have about growing your marketing team and any questions about just marketing in general. We also have Paul Albright, our CEO at Captora with 20 years in technology, previously at Marketo as the Chief Revenue Officer, so he will be a great resource here as well. And just before we start, a few housekeeping items. This session will be recorded, so you guys will get a link in your inbox right after the webinar. This is really conversational heavy, so we encourage you guys to chat us any questions you might have for Barbara, tweet at us with the hashtag AskCaptora any questions, and just have fun and enjoy the conversation. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Paul so we can get started.
Great. Thank you, Aya. So yeah, I'm extremely fired up about having Barbara on the line and in this webinar with us. Very unique experience, scaling up marketing in a very fast growth company, and it links up to a lot of the reasons why I founded Captora, spending a bunch of years over at Marketo and before that at SuccessFactors. I was geeking out on how do you scale up the full funnel across from anonymous or visitors to leads, opportunities to booked business so that you could create a scaling and predictable model across sales and marketing. And the inefficiency that I saw in most modern B2B or SaaS companies started in sales. That was addressed a few years back with CRM, but started to move up the funnel. And the thing that I noticed where the most inefficiency was in the funnel was the top of the funnel. Too much guesswork. How do I prioritize campaigns to launch or optimize? Where are my gaps? Where do I have the most opportunities to create new campaigns? And so we founded Captora to solve those problems. First, identify where priority campaigns and time and money should be spent in order to grow faster, and then help companies to do a more efficient job of turning what were anonymous people into new buyers. And then we connect with marketing automation like Marketo and Eloqua to speed that process of moving a new buyer through the funnel so that you can create a scalable marketing team and predict future revenue much more efficiently by not only using a new technology, but also putting processes around it that will help you to improve CAC, or the magic number, cost of acquiring a new customer, which helps you to justify new budget and continue to scale marketing. So we're now about 70 customers and super excited about our partnership with Greenhouse as well. If you're not familiar with Greenhouse, it's an incredible technology for identifying and finding new people and expanding your reach for great people to find your company. And my experience at Marketo before Captora was that most people were trying to find A-plus marketers. That was probably the number one question I heard from our customers at Marketo. How do I increase the top of the funnel or the numerator in my funnel? Because once I get a lead or new buyer into the funnel, I'm pretty good about converting them. And the laughable quote was, yeah, we'll have to throw some bodies at it. We'll go find a bunch of people to hire in demand gen and throw bodies at it, but that doesn't scale, as you know. So that's a lot of what we'll be talking through today is how do you find the right people? Because it always comes down to great people create great companies. But once you get those great people, how do you put best practices, systems, and technology in place in order to scale through the different parts of your growing years as a company? The statistic you see here, 75% of marketers stated that their lack of skills is impacting revenue. The problem is marketers change jobs quite frequently, and if your company isn't able to find great people, then most companies have that pressure on the existing folks. How do I get my existing team to be more productive by using modern technology and great processes to continue to scale? And if I am using the latest and greatest, how do I make the rest of the world know we're using the latest and greatest to attract other A players? A players attract more A players. So it's not just about throwing bodies at marketing, but the key is hiring great people at the start, continuing to add A players, but then arm them with the right process, systems, and technologies to be able to scale through those different cycles that your company goes through. And that's the cool thing that Barbara's gone through is she's seen the company grow from being less than 20 employees. I think she was employee number 12, all the way to where they are today, which is over 200 employees. So as I have said, please feel free to submit questions along the way. The way that this will work is more of a TED type talk. So we'll keep it informal. I have a bunch of questions that I can go through. If questions aren't flowing from the group of you that are on this webinar, and we'll get things kicked off now. So, Barbara, thanks so much for joining me on this webinar. It's awesome to have you here. And
Thank you.
Why don't you start off by just giving everybody your background and the situation that you find yourself in at Greenhouse today.
Sure. So yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this topic. I feel like a lot of the conversation around marketing definitely focuses on the things that you talked about in terms of the skills and a lot of challenges around the funnel and working with sales and all of that. And the hiring discussion doesn't get to be talked about that much. And I actually come from SaaS B2B sales and marketing technology. So I worked at Genius way back, which was a competitor of Marketo. And so that was a marketing automation platform, and I was doing inbound marketing there. I think for me, what's really interesting about this topic too is because there's so much marketing principles that can be applied to hiring in general, and in this context, hiring marketers. And there's a lot of learnings that can be taken and applied there. So that's really interesting for me. I also have come from consulting with large companies on demand generation, like building out more complex sort of demand generation programs, working with companies like Lenovo, PTC, Dell, rolling out Eloqua and all of the sort of content strategy that's layered in there. And then I've done a lot of work with early stage startups and through these like growth inflection points. So while I prefer and really enjoy the startup side, I've definitely been involved in developing out strategies and solving some of those complex problems at the enterprise level. So it's given me a really good sort of perspective in terms of when you do scale marketing teams and also programs, knowing sort of where the challenges will sort of start to occur as you get bigger and bigger and the complexity of things. So that's just been really helpful for me in my career generally. Just to kind of give a little bit of context about Greenhouse and what I've been doing now, as Paul mentioned, I joined the company 2 years ago, and we were 12 people at the time. And so, like, the first year was really about getting from almost zero to about 3 million, and then last year it was 3 million to 13 million in revenue. So both like pretty big growth spurts. And then on the team side, last year we basically quadrupled the company in terms of headcount. So it's been really fun and exciting, and obviously it's been a ton of work, but that's sort of the context at which I'm coming at the problem right now. And it's really interesting to sort of look at the different challenges that you have at each of those points. And obviously, you know, this year we're trying to double revenue again, and the team will also be growing. So all the challenges that come with that.
Yeah. And when you look at your future goals, I'm sure pipeline growth is one of the top of mind areas for you. how do you think about achieving future goals when I'm sure your budget's growing slower than the pipeline goals are growing, which is the typical B2B growth challenge for any marketing leader? How do you think of that relative to program dollar spend versus technology versus people to solve that problem of growing faster than your budget?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for us, I think like it's definitely a mix of art and science, I would say. Like marketing is responsible for creating 40% of the revenue, and then ultimately we're responsible for 70% of opportunities that are created because we're generating an inbound pipeline which will convert to that 40%. And then we also have a lot of overlap in terms of programs with our outbound SDR team. And so for us, I think like we obviously do, it's really easy to sort of calculate on the sales side based on capacity and their sales targets, like how many people are they going to need and how many opportunities can one SDR set up and et cetera. It makes it very easy to sort of plan how that organization is going to look. And for us, it's been a little bit of like art and science. So we started out by sort of mapping like early on, getting a little bit more generalist, and then you start to get a little bit more specialized in sort of in terms of skill set. So we sort of think we basically want to make sure that we're covering like all aspects of the funnel. And I think the challenge for us is that at each one of these stages, it's kind of like it's really hard to get predictable and reliable benchmarks for yourself because every month or every quarter, it's like the whole environment has changed again. So I think that's been one of our bigger challenges, and we've had to sort of make some guesses and assumptions and really focus on maintaining conversion rates so that in terms of programs and also people that we're able to sort of hit our targets. But that's something that we actually have to like look at and evaluate on a quarterly by quarter basis. We actually tried the annual budget and plan, and we just found that things change so quickly that we have to look at headcount and also spend at a much more frequent stage.
Mm-hmm. And as you built out your team, what does it look like today, and how did you focus on it as you went through the stages? So when you think back at Greenhouse being a $10 million company and then to where you are today, the challenges and the scaling issues change. What did that mean to your org structure, and how do you have marketing organized today?
So our view of the funnel is kind of like an hourglass. So you have like the typical buyer and prospect funnel, and then when they become a customer, there's a whole another set of stages and that funnel. And our like fundamental sort of marketing philosophy here is that all of our customers are going to be what generate our leads long term, and that's how we're going to build a scalable business. And so I think our fourth marketing hire was actually a customer marketing person who didn't just like, it wasn't really about upsells or cross sells at that point. It was more about like how do we engage our customers, work with the product team, and really understand like what's the optimal path that we want our customers to take. How are they going to who are successful, and those that were successful, what did they do? And then how can we map like customer success, product, and marketing communications around that to make sure that more and more of our customers take that path and then turn around and do referrals for us. So we started with like top of funnel demand gen. So it was like, let's start laying the seeds for future growth and all the organic and inbound stuff. At the same time, we needed to like supplement the immediate pipeline demand from sales with demand gen programs and a lot of paid stuff, paid per click. A lot of directory programs worked well to kind of get the pipeline full in the short term. And then product marketing. So like really, really early on, product marketing was a big thing, and sales enablement, because we had several salespeople, and we had no marketing yet. So that was like the immediate need. Then it was like, okay, we need to build pipeline and build the funnel and build awareness, because these salespeople are calling into accounts that have never heard about Greenhouse. And that's kind of like, how do we build up that awareness? And then we focused pretty early, as I mentioned, on the customer funnel, and then came back to product marketing once we started building up the pipeline. So we have like top of funnel, mid funnel. Top of funnel is focused on generating leads, traffic, social media, et cetera. Mid funnel is really like, it's a baton pass. So they pass the leads over to mid funnel team, who does all the nurturing and gets the leads qualified to sales. And then product marketing really supports mid funnel when we get into product positioning and product content, and then works with sales. Obviously, within product marketing, we have like the go-to-market and sort of strategy team, and then we have sales enablement, which is basically a very content-focused role that develops sales tools and also collateral. And then we have the customer marketing team, which is actually more focused on like advocate generation than, as I mentioned, the upsell, cross-sell stuff. And then we have two teams that are supporting the whole marketing organization. One is our brand and buzz group, which is like events, PR, and like digital marketing. And then we have our marketing operations team, which is actually just one person right now, who does the typical sort of ops in terms of like marketing automation and web stuff. But we also look at that team as our sort of internal resource for helping the team be successful. So if you're running a campaign, you can go to this group and ask for reports, and they'll develop them for you and talk through analysis. But they also do like onboarding. So when we have new people join the marketing team, we have like a pretty robust onboarding process at Greenhouse, but then this group also is responsible for making sure that new people on the team know where everything is, have the resources, understand like how do we communicate, what tools we use, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. And
I
you mentioned.
I was going to say too, like to answer your second part of that question, I think the biggest change as we've scaled is just going from more generalist to mixing in a bit more specialized. So we're actually going to be rolling out Captora. We're in the process of that now, and inbound and search in particular generates about 40% of that 40% inbound that's generated through marketing. And so a search marketer, for example, that focuses primarily on organic and paid is a role that we're going to be hiring for to support a program like that, for example.
Got it. And you mentioned sales enablement. There's a question from one of our participants, Dan. How do you see marketers needing to be aware of sales enablement, and what role does that play in marketing from your standpoint?
I mean, for us, it's like we have a team designated to that, because like where product marketing doesn't impact the funnel like demand gen does. Demand gen is basically has that 40% revenue number, and product marketing is basically what's supporting the sales team to get to that other 60% of revenue. And so we have our product marketing team and our sales enablement manager meeting with the sales team on a weekly basis. So she does all of the competitive analysis research. She builds out competitive tools for the sales team. Actually, we're using Confluence for that. So she built out a pretty robust sort of wiki page that has links to everything, so it's always updated. And then she meets with them regularly to basically intake requests and learn about what's happening in the sales process and how marketing can help better support them in terms of what challenges are they coming up against, how can we help them overcome that with maybe we need to position things differently. And then she'll triage and prioritize those requests with sales like on a regular basis. So things might change in terms of what they want or what they need. And it helps the relationship all around, because sales really gets a lot of value out of that interaction and also out of the content that comes from there. And like the product marketing function in general is really what's driving our go-to-market strategy and what verticals we're focused on. So the sales enablement team will really like execute on a lot of the collateral that makes it a bit more relevant to those strategies for the sales team.
And does product marketing report into you, or where does that fit in marketing?
Yep, they report into. They work pretty closely with product and they work pretty closely with sales, but they roll into the marketing function.
Got it. Very cool. And when you think about the onboarding process, this is another question from a participant, Colleen. How has that impacted the success of the marketing new hires? Or do you measure the onboarding and the impact of onboarding in your metrics?
Yeah, I mean, it's like actually critical in terms of how quickly they're up to speed and how quickly they're able to like add value back to the organization. Like we're moving so fast and we're executing on so many programs that one, it just helps them get acclimated into the organization a lot faster if it's like a structured process. And then two, that's going to obviously help them just know how to navigate the organization. So
we're losing you a little bit. The
hello?
Signal isn't good. Yep, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. So as a company, we have a really structured onboarding process, which basically every new hire goes through, and that's a week at our headquarters in New York, and that basically introduces you to all of the different departments, and it's really company focused. And then the second week is when you do your team onboarding, and so there's a very specific program. There's some exercises that you go through. You learn about like all the tools that we use and all the templates and what meetings we do on a regular basis and how those work and all that kind of stuff.
Got it. And interesting, I know you've got multiple offices because the company started in New York, but you've got a San Francisco office as well. How do you think about, or what have you learned to create consistency in the culture across the offices? And when you're onboarding people, what have you built into the way that Greenhouse works to make that a positive and not a negative for developing the culture and the speed of the company and so forth?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard. I think we're lucky because the San Francisco office is 50 people and the New York office is like 150. So it's not, we're a significant chunk of the company, which is good that we're not just like 10 people off on an island. So that part of it is good. Our head of people actually sits in the San Francisco office, which just by default helps make sure that culturally we're also maintained just at the company level. I think the default is just like it has to be over communicating, because even amongst the marketing team, I just found that like we do surveys and stuff, and even people that sit next to each other sometimes don't even know what the other is working on. So we have like our regular team meetings. So each one of like product marketing, demand gen, ops, our brand and buzz group, they do like their own weekly team meetings. Every month we do a metrics review, which is with the entire marketing organization. It's like an all hands. And I pull a lot of the stuff that we present at the board level actually into that meeting. And so we go through the ROI of all the campaigns. We look at the metrics throughout the whole funnel and see where we're at against our goal. And we send that to everybody in advance so that if they have questions, they can think about that before, and then we go and we all discuss that. We were doing a lot of, like, I guess one thing I learned is that, like, we were trying in that process of just, like, trying to make sure people knew what was going on even. We ended up, like, we tried a lot of different things in terms of, like, are we doing the whole group? Are we doing status meetings? And then you end up, like, sitting in a room and half the content isn't relevant to most of the people. So we just kind of like worked our way to like weekly team meetings. Managers have one-on-ones with their teams every week, and then we do like a management meeting to make sure that across all of these different disciplines, we're all like on the same page. And our strategy process is also very collaborative. That's like built into the DNA, I think, here at Greenhouse. So when we think about our Q2, Q3 plan, it's like a working session that I do with the directors. And then we do that metrics review, which is like an all hands, which gives everybody sort of insight into what's happening in the funnel and how that's impacting the business, and also as an individual who's contributing to this, like how are they impacting all of that as well? Like when I'm writing a blog post, I know that I'm, generating traffic. How are those leads moving through the funnel, and what's my contribution? So those are things that have been pretty helpful for us.
What do you use internally for conferencing software? And that's always a hot side topic for not only probably the same systems being used by salespeople to do demos online, but when you're having a discussion and you're sharing slides or video or whatever between New York and San Francisco, what have you found from a system standpoint that works best?
So I don't know why video conferencing is so complicated. It's like it really boggles the mind that it's not solved completely. I know it's complex because you have like hardware and software. My husband actually works at Blue Jeans, so I know it's actually really hard to do. But we use Google Hangouts a lot. We use GoToMeet. Like we've pretty much tried everything, and our IT team actually just rolled out High Five, which is actually really high quality video and sound. And it took a lot of work on their end to like implement it in a way that we can do like all hands company meetings and also team like marketing meetings. But that has helped a lot. We have to do video more than anything because otherwise you just feel disconnected to people.
Question.
We also use like Slack a lot just for like chat. We also use, like our engineering team is using Atlassian tools, so we also use like Confluence, as I mentioned, as like repository for ongoing resources for the team.
Yep. Okay. So shifting a little bit more over into the talent specific area. I remember talking to you before where you mentioned that you have a marketing person that's focused on talent and expanding your brand. Can you talk a little bit about what are the best attributes you look for in marketing candidates, and then how do you expand your brand so that those people find you as well?
Yeah, so I mean, as I sort of mentioned in the beginning, we think about we call it talent marketing and not employer branding because to me, like saying employer branding means that it's a separate brand, and like Google is a good example. You don't think of the people at Google and the company of Google as separate things, and that's what I would like to have. Like that's how I want people to think about Greenhouse as well. So we do have a talent marketing function that rolls into marketing and works very closely with the recruiting team. And the reason that we did that is because we want to be as sophisticated with our inbound strategies for recruiting talent as we are for recruiting customers and leads at the top of the funnel. And that team really focuses on like doing go-to-market and essentially figuring out personas for all of these different departments and functions, and where do they hang out online, and how do we interact and engage with them. What are going to be those key things that we can talk about with our brand and the company and the opportunity here that are going to resonate and really convert them through the stages of our hiring process. And that is very much like structured and funnel based. In terms of skills, I think for every role that we hire, we build out our scorecard, which basically maps out all of the attributes. And I like to sort of think about this kind of like we don't do it as much anymore with marketing, but like in the early days of marketing automation, there was a lot more of this concept of progressive profiling. So as people move through the funnel, you're sort of collecting more information about them. So I sort of think of our scorecards that way. So we we sort of map out all the attributes that we're going to be testing for in the interview process. And then we sort of take, okay, these 3 are going to be for the phone screen. These 4 attributes are going to be for the on-site interview. These 3 are going to be for the culture fit interview, et cetera. And then we're just collecting that information as people move through, and there's always that decision point, like did they pass or fail this interview. In terms of the traits then, to get back to the question, I think for me on the team that we've had, because we're scaling up so quickly and there is so much change, like we really, for us, like one of the biggest things, and it's hard to test for, it is one thing that you have to sort of be a little bit more intuitive about, but just like having a high ceiling, like are they going to come in and grow and expand? And the most, like my top performers are people that haven't necessarily done the job before and have continued to like move into new roles across the marketing team and continue to grow, like being driven, structured communicator, understanding, technology, just like that desire to sort of learn and consume as much as they can to improve their skill set and continue to grow. I think just like grit, curiosity, imagination, open-mindedness, like all of those things are not necessarily specific to a role, but things that we look for because we need people, I think everybody does at this point with how quickly technology evolves, to be adaptable and nimble in their mindset and also their ability to learn new skills.
Yep, that's great. And what is the marketing stack? How do you look at the key components of your marketing stack today?
So I would say that we've been very conservative with our marketing stack. It's interesting because if you look at our sales team, it's like the total opposite. I think we just brought on a new director of sales ops who did an audit, and I think they literally had like 40 different subscriptions and tools that were being used, and some SDRs were using this one and others were using that. So they've really put a big effort to like streamline that. And I think part of that is just because, again, we grew so quickly and it was just like they were trying new things and using different tools. So for us, we were more conservative. Like we have we're using Salesforce. We started on HubSpot, and the reason we did that is because, at the time when we started, like when we built the website, we had like 40 customers, and I really kicked myself, but didn't anticipate growing as quickly as we did. And so HubSpot actually became challenging as we scaled. We've now migrated over to a new website CMS called Craft, and then we're also in the process of rolling out Marketo. So those are kind of like the key technologies that support the marketing stack. We use Uberflips for our resources section right now, which is great because it was easy to implement and get some metrics around how people are interacting with content. And then we're rolling out Captora. We use things like Double Dutch for our events and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And as you look to the future and your own hiring requirements, how do you prioritize or how do you think through the key hires versus the program dollar spend in that mix between the two as the numbers get bigger?
Yes, it's pretty challenging just generally, I think, to to figure out like what that balance is. And I was actually just having the conversation with our VP of Finance this week, because and you mentioned this earlier actually, like at a certain point, the marketing team is not going to be like growing. Like right now we are, because we actually do need people to support these initiatives. And so we have like our company objectives and strategies for the year. Then we flesh out the marketing plan against that. And every person that we're making a justification to hire for, basically we map it back to those specific company objectives and how that role is going to support those objectives and impact the overall goals for the company. And like to the point of this is the 30, 60, 90 for this role, we have to do that to get approval from like that's just how we open jobs here. And that really helps put things in context, I think, because there's always different pains that you're going to have, and I think just getting down to the root cause of the pain is the most important thing, because it's easy to sort of react to that and say like, oh, we need to hire someone or we need a technology, but like without really knowing the root cause, you won't really be able to make a great decision about that. And then in terms of like spend, we try to get as granular, I guess, as we can in terms of our ability to predict where the revenue is going to come from based on our historic programmatic spend. So if I look at, search or directories or events or whatever the program was or the campaign, we basically track those leads all the way through the funnel, and then we come up with like a historic lead number for cost per lead for each of those. And then I kind of use that to forecast from different initiatives how much budget I need. Like if I know the cost per lead and I know what my lead target is, then I can sort of back out of it like that.
And so do you have a pretty good sense? Can you work backwards from, let's say, if May's new bookings target for sales is $1 million or $10 million, call it, and are you able to work backwards from there where you've got an agreement with sales to say, okay, if the number in May is 10 million and the sales cycle is 90 days, then here's how many opportunities need to get created 3 months earlier, and we have a 50% conversion rate from opportunity to bookings, and then we have a 25% conversion rate from lead to opportunity, and a 15% conversion rate from visitor to lead, so that you've got a clear math of the business figured out with sales supporting it?
Yep, and actually our head of finance, we had variations of that, and we've always sort of, since we've started doing sales and marketing, started with reverse funnel math to basically do all of our planning. And our VP of Finance put together a really good model for us. So we have it broken down to the inbound and outbound degree too. So as I mentioned earlier, like there's a portion of inbound leads that come in that have been touched by the outbound team, and so we'll route those back to those outbound SDRs to obviously call and convert. So our total MQL number is to support that 70% of total opportunities created for the company. And then we also have we have the model that goes through just for the inbound, just for marketing generated. So from lead, MQL, opportunity, and then we do SQL and then close. So we track all of that. And the other metric that we tracked this year that's been really interesting for us is ACV, so the average contract value. At the start of the year, the average contract value for inbound, which was like marketing generated revenue, was around $7,000. And by the end of the year, it was closer to $11,000. And so that was really interesting. And part of our go-to-market strategy, well, a big part of it is like moving up market and targeting larger companies. So some of that increase was due to some pricing studies that we did and adjustments that we made there. And part of it was around where we're focusing our campaign dollars and how we're positioning ourselves in the market.
Got it. Well, and in B2B, at least my experience has been there's two types of approaches that you take in marketing. You as a company are either a market creator or you're a market disruptor. And if you're a market creator, then a lot of your early efforts are to get the proof points and the references and start to create the category with influencers. If you're a disruptor, the category is somewhat there. You want to disrupt it with your new technology and different approaches. Would you say Greenhouse is more of a market creator or disruptor, and how did that go into your strategy for growing marketing?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, honestly, because the traditional category that people would put us in is the ATS category, which is applicant tracking. And that, as it is defined today, is just we are not that. Like, that's a sliver of what we do. So it doesn't really make sense to say that that's what we are. But then our challenge is that's the line item on the budget, and it's usually not very big. So we had like a huge challenge to overcome around educating the market about how to do hiring well, like how to be great at people. And once we're still actually doing that. It's like our third real year to market, and so we've been able to gain a lot of traction, and that's because we leverage our customers primarily to like spread the word. But I would say it's a little bit of creation from that perspective, but definitely disruption in the sense that like no one was doing what we were doing, and it was kind of like for us a little bit of the right place at the right time because people were so tired of what they had been using and banging their heads against the wall. Like we had a lot of great, like our early adopters are companies like Airbnb and Pinterest and Dropbox and just these companies that know how to do recruiting really well and weren't supported by technology in the market. They didn't have anything that would help them scale what they were doing, scale their processes. So we kind of came in at the perfect time, and that was how we were able to grow quickly. It was kind of a perfect storm, I think, of that and like having a very, very strong customer focus early on, and also operationalizing and focus on operationalizing within marketing, getting referrals from customers. Referrals are, referrals are about 15% of our revenue, and from lead to closed won is a 70% conversion. I mean, it's just...
You said, was that 15 or 50? 50?
No, 15, but
15.
Like it's been consistent as we've scaled. So we're over 1,000 customers now, and we're still maintaining that percentage and working to grow it even more.
Yeah, that's a really good number. There's again back to my experience of breaking down the funnel. There's 4 ways into the funnel: inbound, outbound, referral, and sales driven. And having that agreement across sales and marketing on what percentage of the funnel does marketing create, and then marketing having a point of view around what percentage of what marketing is creating is coming from each of those 4 categories, and then subdividing those down is a big deal. And referral, to me, means customer. There's 2 parts of referral. It's either customer referral or partner referral. But when I went to Marketo, the referral percent of pipeline was 2%. We got up to 7%, which was not something I was proud of. I was on the phone this morning with the CRO of a company, a fast-growing B2B software company, and they're at over 30%, which is the highest I've ever heard. The best I'd ever heard was like 20-25%. But what's your percentage?
How big is that company?
$100 million.
How big? Wow.
I know. It's really impressive. But it's a super high velocity company too. So $5,000 average deal size, 2-week sales cycle. So they've built out that whole partner referral model was something that they created at the very beginning, but it shows you what you can do. And to your point, everybody sees the same thing. A referral lead is going to convert at 3 to 4 times higher conversion rate than a non-referral lead. So if you can get that moving, that's super great. And then second best is inbound, and inbound is search advertising and social. But if you think about it, it's SEO and SEM or the paid channels. What percentage of your funnel is inbound, and how do you think of inbound relative to, especially the disruption side of the market, being known for certain terms and figuring out what keywords and pain statements work better than others?
So our inbound, actually not even paid programs, just organic and direct, is about 60% of the, impacts 60% of the revenue. That's not just the 100% inbound, so some of that is that is inbound, but it's also attributed to the outbound team. So it's kind of weird how we split that up. But for us, 60% of revenue essentially is coming from inbound, from direct traffic and from organic search.
Got it.
And our organic search conversion from lead to closed won is about 7.5%.
Okay.
So
and
those
what do you use
high,
on
once they get through the pipeline?
Yep. And on the paid channels, what channels are working for you? If you think around, Google, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, et cetera, what are the paid channels that are most important to your growth?
So I think for us last year, and this year we're sort of shifting our focus a little bit, but last year we were really focused on a very wide net. We needed to build up and scale our database really quickly. We needed to test and learn a lot of different things. So we tried a lot of stuff, and we also focused more on filling the top of the funnel than really operationalizing and moving people through it as effectively as we should. And that's what our big emphasis is going to be on this year. So we've already built this great database. We have a bunch of engaged leads. Now let's really lay in the lead scoring, develop out targeted nurtures, all of that kind of stuff. But we had a lot of success with webinars at that top of funnel end. So I think we generated maybe 12,000 leads from webinars last year, which was the biggest chunk. And then social media was also another really good channel that we leveraged in a paid capacity. Twitter primarily and LinkedIn. LinkedIn, we did targeted. LinkedIn is actually a great channel for us because we're able to get extremely granular about who we want to target with InMail. And we've had a lot of success, really high conversion on those programs and campaigns. So social media, LinkedIn primarily, webinars, and then we also had sort of more mid-funnel initiatives. So there's a lot of directory sites out there like Software Advice, Capterra, those type of things. And you put screenshots about your product and all that kind of stuff. We did some programs with our customers and some spiffs with our CS team to get reviews for us. And I think we got 60 or 70 reviews at one point during one of those spiffs. And we saw a direct correlation with that increase of reviews and activity and pipeline generated and revenue from those directory sites, because they come in as sort of mid-funnel leads already. So that was a really good way for us to kind of leapfrog the funnel a little bit. So again, this year we're going to be more focused on taking the stuff from the top of the funnel and moving it through. Last year it was kind of let's build the top of funnel, and also let's focus on some mid-funnel direct programs like pay-per-click, directories, et cetera. and that'll sort of supplement the pipeline in the short term. Paid search for us converts at, I'm just checking the number. So for us, paid search from the inquiry to close one converts at 7%, which is pretty high.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember talking about the top of funnel challenge when I was at Marketo. I was fortunate enough to talk to a lot of marketing execs. Same story here, but one conversation in particular where the person was saying, I love Marketo. It helps me with nurturing known contacts. So that's great for my denominator, but I've got a numerator issue. A numerator being the top of the funnel. I need more quality leads coming into the funnel, and Marketo doesn't really help me to do that. And obviously that was one of the key things that led to creating Captora. So I'll skip that part of it. But the other part of that discussion that was really interesting was that we kind of laughed it off and said, we're going to compete over the same people, because the problem was you got to throw bodies at it, and now that's what Captora is here to help with, is make people more productive, not just have to throw bodies at it. But that said, you still need to have people that get it. And my experience, this is the biggest skill gap I've seen in my career, and I've been in the IT world, and the HR world, and now the marketing world quite a bit. I've never seen a skill gap as there is for great marketing people and people that really understand modern digital marketing. What are some of the lessons you've learned to create an A+ team? And you've got this unique perspective of both running marketing in a hot B2B company, as well as the company is about recruiting great people. So no better convergence than to ask you that question. How have you approached it? What are some of the lessons you've learned about filling that skill gap and keeping those people challenged and excited to be there and contributing at Greenhouse?
I mean, I think a big part of it is just deliberately making it a thing that's talked about. I think when you're growing fast especially, and even if you're not growing fast, like marketing just is fast-paced. And what I found is like people, even though the team is like super high performing, people get into like the hamster wheel and they don't stop to like check on things, They don't stop to like consider, what were my subject line like which ones even opened more than the other, or where did I get the most click-through? So just like embedding a mentality where the team sort of gets together and discusses stuff, which also helps people that aren't like in demand generation positions, for example, learn about it and potentially bringing them into the fold. And we have a lot of people that'll be, in product marketing or even CS that like raise their hand and say, hey, this looks interesting, like I want to work on that, and we give them projects. I think learning and development is huge for us. As a company, it's something that we haven't formalized until this year, and now it's a little bit more formal. But like everyone on my team has been to either a conference or taken a workshop in the last year. Like they are pushed to constantly attend events. They're pushed to network. Like philosophically, we want people to all be thought leaders. It's not like, the VP is going to go speak on a webinar, but no one else can. Like we want everybody involved in like building their personal brand and learning. And so I think honestly, like that's fundamentally one of the biggest things is finding people who are interested and curious and want to learn and want to grow, like fundamentally, and B, making sure that you're actually giving them those opportunities and also pushing them to do things that are outside of their comfort zone, and just like supporting them to take the time off to go to an event or, to sit in on a panel or, take an online class or whatever it is. It's really important. And even if you say like, you should do this, it's like maybe you should send them links for things, which I do with my team all the time. I think just like really making that front and center as a big priority for the team is critical. And it also keeps them extremely engaged, knowing that they're going to get those opportunities to grow their career. We just did a employee engagement survey, and I was really proud because the marketing team, I think it was like 20 points higher than the best tech companies benchmark in marketing. And it was also higher than the rest of Greenhouse. Like, it was the highest. So I was really proud about that. But I think that's it speaks to why people are engaged and why they're also performing, because they're given those opportunities and they take them.
That's cool. Yeah, congratulations on that. That's awesome. Well, we got 3 minutes left. I figured I'd wind down the questions with what I thought was an interesting one anyway. We'll see if everybody else feels that way. What are the top couple of questions that you ask candidates when you interview them to figure out, are they the right people to hire? Are they gritty, as you said? Are they curious, learners, coachable, right fit for your culture? Really curious on your killer couple of questions that you asked to figure that out.
So I will say I don't actually have a canned question that I ask every candidate. I think it's really the overall process. So depending on the role, there's always an exercise. So for our ops people or demand gen people, we've done a lot of funnel math and metrics type of whiteboarding sessions where it's here's the problem or here's the situation, where would you focus and why would you focus on that area? You would focus on increasing this conversion rate or that conversion rate and why, to test their actual skills in terms of work product. If it's an event person, we have them put together a whole event plan. They do diagrams, mood boards, all this kind of stuff. We also have I think our culture fit interview, which is standardized across the company, is actually the one that gets to some of those very fundamental cultural aspects of the people that we look for, which then impact across everybody's team. And a lot of them are more situational type of questions to better understand. The things that we want to assess for are how authentic people are. That's one of our core characteristics, and so we get a lot of that through the questions, through how they respond to things. But we were hiring an event person, and I asked, we were asking them questions about logistics and fundamentals and this and that, and ultimately it's well, what was the best event that you ever attended, and why was that the best event? And a lot of people will say it's something that they created, and it's kind of okay, for me it was probably a concert, and what did you walk away feeling about that? And similarly, if we were hiring them for our event role, it's now that you know Greenhouse, how would you expect our customers to walk away from the event feeling, and what would they have gotten out of the event? That was just the most recent job we hired for, actually. So. Yeah.
No, it makes a ton of sense. That's one of the things I love to do, too, is a working session, not only to see how the candidate thinks, but also how does it feel to work together as you solve problems kind of on the fly.
Yeah, and actually we hired a director of demand gen recently, which was a really hard hire to make. But we had everyone on the demand gen team that would be reporting to this person involved in developing out the interview plan, and they all also interviewed this person. So every one of them was invested in making the right hire, and also participating in the process.
Love it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Barbara, and thank you everyone for joining us in today's conversation. We will be sending out a recording later this afternoon. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. And thanks everybody
thank
for
you
participating.
so much. I enjoyed it.
Have a great rest of the day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.